Alright, so today I'm going to be listening to a piece by Javier Torres Maldonado, another piece of his for chamber orchestra. It's called Exabrupto, and it was written in 1998. So the full instrumentation is 15 players. It is 1121, 1110, one percussionist, and 11111 for the strings. And also there is a pianist, also doubling celesta. Now, the 15 players are split up on stage into different groups. So I'm just going to list off the groups here. So group 1 is flute, clarinet doubling on E flat, violin 1, violin 2, and viola. The flute is also doubling on piccolo. Group 2 is horn, trumpet, clarinet 2, which is doubling on bass, and oboe doubling on oboe d'amore. And then group 3 is the low stuff. It's the trombone doubling on bass trombone, bassoon, double bass, and cello. And you can see the way that they're positioned. The strings are in the foreground, and then winds are further back, along with brass. And there are two soloist stations between the groups. Here we have the pianist, who also has a celesta nearby. And then on the other side we have two stations for a single percussionist. The percussion list is as follows. At station 1 we have vibes, tom-tom, antique cymbals, and one of which is put on a timpano, suspended cymbal upside down on a timpano, woodblock, Javanese gong, anvil, and two triangles, whip, bass drum. Then the second station, which is positioned behind, the percussionist will be playing bass drum, marimba, suspended cymbal, xylophone, antique cymbals, temple blocks, Cuban cymbal, spring coil, claves, maracas, high whistle, tubular bells, but just the F sharp 5, small tam-tam, and a glockenspiel, and two congas. So, some other things on the piece. This piece was written in memory of 50 native Mexicans killed in Acteal, Chiapas in 1998, and of all the men dead in hope of an America belonging to every man who lives in it. And it was commissioned by Nouvelle Ensemble Moderne. And this is an earlier piece for the composer, so I think it must have been a very big commission. If we look at the first page, it seems that it is mostly handwritten, and he has very neat handwriting. This looks to be a scan. And this publication is from a couple years later in 2000. You can see he has group 1 positioned at the top of the score, then piano, which has 3 staves at the start, group 2, the percussionist, and then group 3 on the bottom. So yeah, I have a couple episodes back on another chamber orchestra piece from 2003 by the same composer. And I also have a number of other episodes on Maldonado. I believe episode 3 is the first one, so if you want to get his biography, I would have a look at that one. If you are interested in the recording that I'm looking at today, it's in the video description, as always. Pause the video here and have a listen, and if you want to hear my thoughts, just come back and unpause it. Yeah, this was a fantastic piece. I really liked it, and this was a great listen I wish I could show the score. Like, I wish it was public domain because it's very gorgeous, and it's only 200 something measures because it's quite slow. Um, there's a couple different tempi, but it ranges from like 48 to 72 quarter equals. And I really liked the way he introduced the piece with this sort of like repeated note idea in different tempi that clearly established this shifting tempi, but also it was like a spatial idea, right? It's like sort of the easiest and simplest idea you could use to showcase how these groups are occupying different spaces of the stage. And yeah, it was just a really fascinating opening, and I liked how shortly after he started featuring individual groups, like you started to get moments where the group one was doing a lot on its own. Shortly after that, you get the oboe d'amour solo, the first of like three, and that change in texture is really fantastic. And the use of oboe d'amour and then adding the clarinet and then introducing all of group two was really fun. The use of percussion and piano to accent these shifts in texture or to like play in between other groups was really fun. And he asks for bass drum as high as possible, and that that bass drum was a very distinctive sound in the piece. And then similar to his other chamber orchestra piece we looked at, which introduced bamboo chimes at the end, this piece also saves its most colorful instruments for the end. You have a celesta solo followed by the congas instead of the bass drum, just accenting the end of it. And yeah, it's just really pleasant to listen to, even on a basic level. Just listening to the use of the ensemble and instrumentation is extremely fun, and this would be really cool to put together live and to hear live. I think yeah, it's really cool. I'm gonna look up this event that he's dedicated the work to, just so that I can properly speak to it or draw attention to it. So the Acteal massacre was a massacre of 45 people attending a prayer meeting of Catholic indigenous townspeople, including a number of children and pregnant women who were members of the pacifist group the Bees in the small village of Acteal in the Mexican state of Chiapas. A right-wing paramilitary group, Mascara Roja, murdered the victims on December 22nd, 1997, while the government of Mexico first admitted responsibility for the massacre in September 2020. So for a very long time, this was not recognized by the Mexican government. I don't know if I'm going to be able to give enough context in the scope of this video, but if you're interested, this massacre was part of the Chiapas conflict, and it's it's been a struggle for the indigenous people since it's just a continuation of the struggle of under colonialism, even in post-colonial Mexico. After the Mexican War of Independence, a legal code was created that distinguished people of Spanish ancestry from those of indigenous ancestry, and this created a lot of issues regarding land rights, social rights, etc. So, if you're not aware, that's sort of the source of this conflict. And in 1994, there was a uprising, and this massacre happened about 4 years later. And yeah, these people were murdered with machetes and AK-47s, and like within a month, several people were charged with the killings. But like I mentioned before, it was not recognized by the Mexican government until very recently. So that's a little bit of background. This is what Maldonado wanted to draw attention to with the composition of this piece in and around the same time. And I appreciate that the piece is a thing of its time. It's taking a stance on this issue and not trying to be some apolitical thing. So hopefully, if this piece is programmed in the future and played, it will continue to draw attention to ongoing colonial conflicts in Mexico, or conflicts which have resulted from colonialism. And yeah, on that note, I will be ending today's session, and we'll be moving on to something completely different tomorrow.